Hey folks, welcome to another Broken Meeple review, and today it's Catan Starfarers with little rocket ships. Whee! We'll get onto these a bit later, but oh my god. Catan Starfarers is an old version of Catan, which was called Starfarers of Catan. That was released back in the 90s, like the mid-90s, I think, shortly after Catan had first come out. And it was based on sort of intergalactic Catan setting where you actually went out and explored different planets, came up against alien encounters, but it was quintessentially Catan, but with some extra bits thrown on top, and it made it a bit of a more meaty experience in a sense, or certainly a longer one. This is a long-awaited reprint of it, because people have wanted this one reprinted for ages, but we thought, with components that this one had, like plastic rocket ships and that, there's no way they're going to be able to do it. Well, technology has got better now, and now we have a reprint of Starfarers. This only does 3 to 4 players, which is fine, because frankly, the 5 to 6 player expansions for Catan sucked. I had no problem with that. It's meant to take about 2 hours or so, more on that a bit later. But essentially, most of this is normal Catan. The rolling of dice, getting resources based on what is rolled and where you've got your various colonies on. The difference here, though, is that you start on these planets and you can move your ships as you build them to different planets across the board. And as you settle down on them, you can get more resources. But as you move, you might encounter, you have alien encounters, which give you a little flowchart narrative, like, you are attacked by pirates. Do you run away or fight? Yes or no? Alright, you chose to run away. Do you have speed of this? And stuff like that. It flows through and you get the outcome, and it could be positive or negative. The main crux of it, though, is very much typical Catan. You've got a couple of ways of scoring points by, terraforming certain planets or killing off some space pirates, but for the most part, it's get the planets, get the colonies out, score points for having colonies and star bases out, a few points for maybe 1 or 2 other aspects where the encounter cards might give you these honor tokens that effectively can add up to points. You get to a certain number of points and you're the winner of the game. It's very much like normal Catan in the way it works. And so, rules-wise, this is definitely a harder one to get into than a lot of the other Catans. Yeah, you're going to be familiar with the whole roll dice and get resources, but there's even some changes to that. Like, star bases or cities in this one don't get you 2 resources. So you have to unlearn that bit of Catan and learn this one. The encounter cards are a new setup. The way that space pirates and the pirate colonies, whatever they are on the terraform planets, work slightly differently. You've got travel to take into account. There's quite a few extra rules on this one that you have to learn in addition to what you already need to learn for Catan. And as such, I think that if you're trying to think of Catan as an introductory game for players, stay the hell away from this one. This is very much more Catan for the Catan veterans, I feel. We're talking like the cities and knights level of Catan here, as opposed to normal Catan and Catan with seafarers that I could pull out for somebody who was new to Catan. I wouldn't pull this out for someone who was new to Catan, although I have had to once or twice, and it's like, well, they didn't win the game, funny enough, put it that way. But, it's one of those things you got to bear in mind. Components-wise, though, this is the big bucks, as you can see. It comes with a fair amount of stuff in it, although a lot of that is the plastic insert. You have got all these massive tiles for, the boards themselves, the big-size almanac rulebook as well as the normal rulebook. You've got trays in there to hold the cards while they're in the game. Lots of plastic pieces. It's well-produced, I'll give it that. you are paying for a lot of pieces in this game. And, of course, the main attraction, your rocket ship. Whee! Crash.
Lord help me, what? You need it on the bridge, sir. Knock on my door! Knock next time!
I'm always doing this with these. Why do I want to crash everything I touch? But it's just these are kind of ridiculous, but, this was one of the gimmicks of the old Starfarers of Catan, where you had this plastic rocket ship where it had these little coloured balls there. You can't see them on the camera, but you can hear that they're in there, different colour ones, and basically whenever it wants you to work out your speed or do the equivalent of a die test for encounters, you basically tip it upside down, see what 2 balls appear, and that is what, that determines your speed in that. So it's a cute little gimmick, nothing major in that sense, but the main attraction with this is not the whole shaking of it just as a glorified die, because otherwise that's bit extreme. It's the idea that as you get upgrades for your ship, ones that make you move faster, one that allow you to deal better like damage in encounters or deal with pirate colonies, or one that just allows you to do better trading actions, you can essentially get these pieces and bolt them on to your ship. So you can get boosters down here, you can get the like compartments here, and you can get cannons that stick out of the top. And before you know it, you've created this cool little toy ship in front of you. And it's definitely one of the more gimmicky yet fun aspects of the game, just building up this ship however you want it. Certainly the speed boosters are probably more useful than the other two by far. You know, I guarantee you boosters are going to be bought way more often than, you know, cannons and the trade compartments are. Even though they have their uses, it's like, you know what, you can do pretty well in this game if you literally just buy a ton of speed, you know, and not buy anything else. It may hit you every now and again, but it's not really going to hinder you too much. Although some trade compartments might be useful for the aliens, because as well as some encounters that you have, when you go to these different planets, some of them, the tiles, are actually trade stations. 4 alien races, each one themed with a certain like ability, and when you put a trade station down or a trade ship down on one of those places, you get to look through a deck of cards which has a special ability for that alien race. You've basically made a friend. But with that alien race, it gives you a special power. So they're tenderly themed around a certain thing, but one race is very good at letting you convert X into Y at better rates. Another one might let you draw more cards. Another one might give you better upgrades, that kind of thing. And they're pretty generic abilities, and they're kind of rinse repeat in a sense. I was hoping for a bit more variety, because one deck of aliens is literally 2-for-1 ratio on blue, 2-for-1 ratio on yellow, 2-for-1 ratio on green, 2-for-1 ratio on red, 1-for-1 ratio on goods, which is kind of like a wild thing. That's literally all that race does. Would have liked a little bit more variety.
Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey.
And this comes into play with the encounter cards as well, because they are different in the way of their outcomes, in the sense that you can't game the system too much by thinking, well, I've seen you before, so if I choose this option, this will come out good, in which case great. Because they do have differing options, and that's a good thing. But there's not a ton of them in the game, and you will go through them relatively quickly. But it is also a little bit disappointing that so many of the scenarios repeat themselves. You know, it's like, I think there's like probably, you can imagine that there's something like 30 cards in the deck. I think there's more, but I'm just giving you a ratio here. 30 cards in the deck, and there's probably 5 scenarios. So 6 cards like per scenario. You've met a trading race. Oh, we've met them about 5 times already. You are attacked by space pirates. Oh, what, again? You know, so, and you meet a trader merchant, and will you offer this trade with him? It's like, for crying out loud, I mean, could it have hurt you to put a bit more effort into the encounter cards here? Because, I mean, we're in a day and age where you could have an app with a ton of events that happen during the game. I mean, other games have done it, and even other games that have used encounter decks have come up with more variety just in a deck of cards or an event deck. Here it just feels like the bare minimum was put into those encounters, and there's not a massive issue on the sense of gameplay because you have different outcomes for them, but it does kind of kill the immersion a bit when you constantly have to sort of go, oh look, the same space pirates again, woo, you know, like 5 or 6 times in a game, where the outcome is different but not that much different. You know, you can sort of go, right, well, if I run away, this is likely going to happen, and if I fight, I'm probably going to need to do a strength test. You know, some of these things you can kind of figure out pretty quickly. The game itself, 2 hours, yeah, easily. I mean, you are looking at 2 to 2.5 hours, possibly even 3 hours for your first game in that, or if you've got slow players. This game can take a long time, and that's probably the biggest problem it has. The whole random element of rolling for resources is normal in Catan. I like Catan, it's on my shelf. But I can get through a game of Catan in 45 to 60 minutes. This is 2 to 3 hours. That's a long time to be playing Catan. And with the encounters that you will see again and again and again, the repetition sets in pretty quickly. This is a game where it's well produced and it's fun, you know, and you've got variants in the way of setup. Like, you can have planets set up all over the place. You can have a face down so that you explore. In fact, I recommend you use that variant every time, because sometimes you can have the whole board where it's all visible. Rubbish. No, no, no. Play the Explorer variant and have them all face down so that you've got to go to it and explore it. It's a bit more interesting. At least have some exploration in the game. But, you know, it's not like you'll come across a place and it's totally useless for you. At least, well, not often anyway. But you're exploring space. You shouldn't know exactly what's there. But it's 2 to 3 hours of Catan dice rolling, deciding the trading, what are you going to buy, resolving an encounter, which by the time you've seen the same scenario about 5 or 6 times, they lose their appeal with listening to what's going on. One person to your left reads it, and then you might test with another person on your right. That's their attempt to get you involved in the game, but you're just basically doing a die roll for them and, you know, shaking the shit thing, and and occasionally reading the card, which is the same thing you've read again and again and again. It's not that involving, and sometimes you like roll your eyes a bit when waiting for your turn to come back round with slow players. And it's like, oh, it's almost my turn. Oh, you've drawn an encounter. I gotta wait for that now. Come on. I'm not actually doing this. This is kind of what's going through my head. But it's like when it starts pushing past 2 hours, you're like, you know what? This could have been shorter. And like I say, 90 minutes is probably still too long for it. But I can survive with 90 minutes because I've played 90-minute Catan games. But 2 to 3 hours is a long time to play Catan. As fun as this can be, I mean, people are making references to space movies and stuff, Star Wars, Spaceballs and all that, and people enjoy the whole gimmick of, you know, upgrading the ship. This is a cool component, you know, shaking it is just a little fun gimmick, and, you know, it's well produced. And you can vary the board each time. You know, it certainly doesn't need expansions other than maybe more encounter cards. Half of it is standard Catan. You've just got to learn the other half as well, which does make the setup quite lengthy. It's a lengthy setup as well, and also quite a long takedown time, because you've got all these different Greek symbols and all the planets that you put aside, and then you put them on. That tells you what number it can be. You've got to set up this whole frame board with all the beehive holes in it and set them up. And then you got to teach all the rules, and there's a lot of setup in this game for what it is. You know, a normal version of Catan. It's definitely a meatier Catan. So I enjoy the game fine, but the length is a big killer. Do I want to play a Catan game for 2 to 3 hours? That is really the question you need to ask yourself. Is that too long for you? The game itself is still Catan, and I like Catan. The mechanics of Catan are still fun. The theme of this, whereas it doesn't kind of leap out at you, is still something that is a bit more attractive to people than just building generic house and road on an island. You know, at least you've got the space scene that you can go with here. The aliens are different player powers. They're interesting. They help you like to get points as well as get a special ability, which is cool. The different ways that you can get points on certain planets can be something to aim for. And of course, the speed aspect of moving around space. It feels a little bit like an exploration space game, but don't even think that this has got anywhere close to like a 3 or 4x capability in it. It's just basically a different version of Catan. So I like the game overall, but I think this is going to be something that's not going to appeal to a lot of people. You know, I think you have to really love Catan, and I mean more so than even I do, to say, you know what, 3 hours, 2 hours to 3 hours of Catan is good for me. I'm cool with that. I mean, certainly you don't have to engage your brain a ton in this. So if you just want to kill a lot of time with a game that's relatively simple, then this could be a good fit. You know, you don't need your brain much for this, but I need to kill 2 to 3 hours and I don't want to play a heavy game. Cool. We'll play some Catan Starfarers then, and I will play this from time to time. I will much prefer to play this with 3 players than 4. You know, don't give me a 4-player game if I can help it, just because of the length. 3-player, you can get to that 2-hour length, and that's like not too bad. Not too bad at all, but cool. You gotta be in the mood for it, that's all I can say. So, it's well produced. It's probably lacking a bit in variety from encounters and that, and the alien powers. I thought they could have done a lot more with that, and 2 to 3 hours is a long time to play Catan. But overall, it's still a fun game that I will play every now and again, particularly if it hits the table or happens to be at a game cafe. Although this is not an introductory version of Catan, be aware of that. If you are teaching Catan for the first time, do not start with this one. It won't go down well. So, whoa, he's starting to collapse there. It's a black wormhole in space. But overall, I would give this probably a 6 out of 10. It's decent, and I will play it, and I think some people are going to enjoy it a lot more and probably don't mind the 2 to 3 hour length, in which case I could see this being a 7 or an 8 for most people. I'd be hard pressed to think that this is going to be a 9 or 10 out of 10 for a year, but it's definitely one for the very big Catan fans, and it's definitely refreshing to see something that was out of print for so long finally come back in a nice looking copy. You know, the production quality is still pretty good and the rocket ships are cool and they don't break anywhere near like the old ones did. I mean, I've had no problems with these so far. You know, the old ones used to break every time. This one, pretty easy to put the pieces on and it look colourful and kind of cartoony while you're doing it. So some cool aspects, just probably not as awesome as I was expecting it to be, mostly just because the time length just goes a bit to infinity and beyond, shall we say, further than it should be. So that's it for me and Starfarers of Catan. I'll see you on the next Broken Meeple review, and for now, regardless of whether you've broken my rocket ship or not, it's still only a game. Take care, and whatever will we do next? I'll see you on the next Broken Meeple video.